Welcome to another episode. Today is something a bit different. I want to introduce my second ever sports bike to the channel. This is the 2009 R6. Now this isn't one of those random purchases or anything like that. I bought this back in 2011. I rode it around for a few years, and then in 2014 I bought the Ducati Panigale, and that's when this thing, for me anyway, took a bit of a back seat. My younger brothers then started riding it about, and it's only, I think it's the last 2 years this bike has just sat idle doing nothing. So my plan today is to get it started, do a couple of checks over on it, and then it's booked in for its MOT next weekend, where I will hopefully take it out a bit more often, especially next year when the sun shows its face.
Now, because I've not used this bike for a long time, obviously I've got to take the seat off to get to the battery area. I've already taken the battery out, and with this bike I'm going to replace it with something I've never tried before, and it is a Motovlog battery. Now, if you've never fitted or removed one of these batteries from an R6, it's a little bit of a faff, because you've got to remove 4 screws and then you've got to mess about with this little flange until the battery pops in like so. And once that's in, just connect the terminals naturally, then put the little rubber strap over to make sure the battery is secure and that it's not going to bounce anywhere. Not that the tank would let it do that anyway. And with the battery in, it's time to start the bike.
Apparently it's fully charged.
Now, as you can see, the cause of concern on my face is not the microphone that's folded in ruining the quality of the sound. It's the fact that the bike won't start, and now I've got to try and figure out why it's not starting, because the sound of a relay, although it does actually sound pretty good, it's not good in this instance.
That's super frustrating.
Now, as a non-bike mechanic, I did what every non-bike mechanic would do, and I pressed the button a few times, twisted the throttle a few times, and then knocked the bike on, then off, then on, then off. And it obviously didn't work because the bike didn't start.
Right, so we've got a bit of an error going on with the bike now. You can't make this up. So when you knock the bike on, I'll just show you now, does all the usual things, and then you can see there's a code number 12. Now, the frustrating thing with that is that's the crank sensor, crank position sensor. So I've got to look now to see how much that's going to cost me. I need to get that delivered by the end of the week so that on Friday I can fit it, get the bike MOT'd on Saturday, and then hopefully that'll be it. But what a frustration, man. This bike was working fine the last time we parked it up. So yeah, it's a lesson learned. I think these vehicles that we all park up and leave alone need to be ridden. So yeah, just gonna crack on with everything else now.
And by everything else, I mean going back to do exactly what I was doing before, pressing the switch, twisting the throttle, pulling the clutch in, knocking the bike on and off. But thankfully something did happen.
Now, I've just had a little bit of a change of luck, and that's because a friend said to me years ago that sometimes there's ways of clearing codes without doing anything, without changing certain things. And I just thought, well, knock it off, knock it back on a couple of times. And I did that with the ignition switch pressed in. I knocked the key off, knocked it back on with the ignition switch pressed. The code changed from 12 to 11. Now, I don't know why it did that, but I left go of the ignition. This done its clicks and whatnot, and then the code cleared. So I pressed the button straight away, and this is what happened. Now, that's the first time I've got this started. It did turn over just now, it started to crank, but I stopped it straight away to knock the camera on so that you can hear the bike, and you can hear it's not happy, it's woo, 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 but it's alive. So that means I don't have to spend money on a crank pressure sensor, and I'm probably going to chuck what I just did in some forums to hopefully help anybody that has this issue.
But unfortunately it does still have the same issue, so I'll go into that in another video.
I've obviously got to keep an eye on that now, but thankfully the bike is started. Woo! She sounds lovely. So this is it, my 2009 R6. It's in quite a nice condition, as you can probably see. Oh man, I'm just super happy that it's all working again. It's got 5,989 miles on the clock, which means that out of all those years that I was using it and the years that my brothers were using it, didn't really do much at all. Like I said, it only had about 2,000 miles on it when I bought it. But oh man, it's so nice to see this thing ticking over. Wow. So that's it. Welcome to the channel. It's time to get this seat back on now then.
Now, as I mentioned earlier on, I've got to secure the tank by replacing the 4 screws that I took out originally. These 4 screws have got Loctite on them, so I don't even know if they're meant to come out, to be honest with you, and if there's an easier way to pull the battery out. But this is the way I do it. It works for me, may not work for other people, and it is a case of now just replacing those 4 screws and then putting the seat back on. So with the seat back on, and before I move on to do the other jobs, it's worth just doing another test fire up to make sure the faults are clear.
Still all good. So excited!
So next on the list is a full brake bleed. I've got to get the caps off, get some new fluid through the system and make sure that these brakes can stop the bike that is capable of moving forward at quite a pace. And on looking inside, you can see this is well overdue because it looks like somebody has tipped their coffee in there. While I carried out the bleed, I checked all the surrounding area as well, making sure all the screws that are holding things in place are not corroded, which they're all in a pretty good condition. Check the brake discs over and the forks as well to make sure there's no leaks in the seals. A very little issue has popped up. This brake lever stays in whenever I pull it, so I've got to push it back out. What I'm going to do is loosen that screw and the bolt underneath it, and I'm going to spray some penetrating fluid in there as well, just to get a bit of lubrication in there, and hopefully that will help sort things out.
There we go.
Now that the issue's sorted, it's time to top up the brake reservoir and pump through that nice fresh fluid before putting the diaphragm back in place and replacing and securing the cap. With the front end all checked over, I move to the rear and start off with the rear brake bleed. I check over the surrounding area and the chain, then once that's all sorted, I give the bike a bit of a clean, pump up the tyres, and then the bike is pretty much ready to go, bar one thing.
So this is the finished product. It's a nice looking clean bike now, thankfully, and it's going to be ready for the MOT next week because all the brakes are sorted apart from the rear one. I had a bit of an issue trying to get all the air out of that because, well, I don't quite know, but I'm going to look at rebuilding the rear master cylinder and the rear caliper as well, so we'll go from there and see how that goes, but the bike fires up, no problem. All the lights work on it now as well. So, really happy with it. So that is it. Hopefully the next video you see will be this passing its MOT and going for a nice little ride, providing the weather's well. But hey, that brings this episode to an end. Thanks for watching. I'll bring you another video soon. Take it easy.